Does this Ram 1500 with the EcoDiesel actually get good fuel mileage? Well, we're about to find out, and we're going to compare it to my Hemi and see how she does. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have this 2017 Ram 1500 with the EcoDiesel, and we are going to see what the real world highway fuel mileage is on this truck. Now, Ram claims it's going to be around 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers, or about 27 miles per gallon, which is a bold claim. So we are going to put that to the test first of all, see what we actually come up with. We have about a 40-kilometer highway route. I also figured we would test my own Ram 1500 with the Hemi. Same year, it's a 2017 Ram 1500, so it should be a pretty fair comparison, and we're going to see how much better the EcoDiesel is on the highway compared to the Hemi. And then lastly, we'll fire up this old girl here, and we will run the same course with this truck just to see how far pickup trucks have come in terms of fuel economy, because this old girl likes to drink fuel, so that'll be fun. Okay guys, so let's talk about the route we're gonna take. So basically it's, well, just under 40 kilometers, about half an hour of driving. On this route we'll be going 110 kilometers an hour on cruise control, and it's pretty flat, so it should be a pretty good run. Now, just before we hit the road, comparing these two trucks, they are both 2017 Ram 1500s. One has the EcoDiesel, obviously, and one has the Hemi. It is basically comparing apples to apples, but there are some differences. This truck right here is a crew cab, and this truck behind me, my truck, is a quad cab, meaning that this truck's gonna weigh about 300 pounds more. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw 300 pounds of weights in the back of my truck just to make it a little more comparable. Another thing to note is that this EcoDiesel has basically just some street tires on it. My Ram with the Hemi has some more aggressive all-terrains, which is gonna not really help the fuel economy. And then lastly, this EcoDiesel comes standard with 355 gears, whereas my Hemi comes standard with the 321 gears. What does that mean? Basically, the lower the gears you have, the more fuel efficient the truck should be. So we would expect the Hemi in terms of gear ratio to be a little bit more fuel efficient. So not quite apples to apples, but it's pretty darn close. They're even both bighorn models and even the same freaking color. So it is gonna be a pretty comparable test, which I'm happy about. All right, so we're at the Flying J. We're just gonna put some fuel in this truck, top her all the way up, and then we'll go do our run, and we'll come back to this exact pump, and we'll see how much fuel we burned. Okay, we're on the road, and like I said, we're gonna keep her at 110 kilometers an hour on cruise control as best we can as traffic permits, but it looks like we got a pretty open stretch here, so we should be okay. Yeah, I'm excited to see how efficient this EcoDiesel is. I've heard so many of you guys talk about the fuel economy is incredible, so I'm pretty pumped to actually see some real world results. And I think a lot of you guys will actually be shocked how efficient the 5.7 liter Hemi actually is on the highway. City is a different story. This truck also has the MDS cylinder cutout system, so that's gonna make a big difference on the highway. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a pretty good comparison, and I'm excited for some results. All right, we're on the back stretch of our loop here. We are still cruising at 110 kilometers an hour, and we are averaging, if you guys can see that, 12.1 liters per 100 kilometers. The factory spec highway mileage for this truck with the Hemi is 11 liters per 100 kilometers. So we're 1 liter over that. We do have some heavy wind going one way. We got some thunderstorms coming in, as you guys can probably see. So that is probably why we are averaging 1 liter over the average, and probably because I have some all-terrain tires on this truck, which doesn't help the fuel economy either. So that's probably the reason why we're a little bit over the factory average. But we will see our official calculated value of fuel economy when we refuel, and we'll do some math there and figure that all out. Okay, we're back at Shell, same pump. We have a final mileage of 12 liters per 100 kilometers. All right, as you guys saw, the Hemi got 12 liters per 100 kilometers, which is 20 miles per gallon. Not too bad. If we crunch the real numbers we got, it was much closer to 12.5 liters per 100 kilometers, or 19 mpgs. So not bad for, you know, a 5,000 pound plus pickup truck, and with a 5.7 liter displacement engine in it. So overall, not too bad. Let's see what the EcoDiesel can do. All right, we are in the EcoDiesel. At our starting point, we're gonna fill her up, top her up with diesel fuel this time, and we will see the fuel economy. Obviously, it's gonna be quite a bit better than the Hemi, well, at least you would think. I'm pretty confident that it will be, but we'll see how much better. That is the key here. Once again, the traffic is pretty light. We shouldn't have any problems having to slow down. We should be able to keep this speed pretty much the whole time, so that's good. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what this thing is all about, what people have been, raving about the fuel economy, and I'm pretty excited. Now, one thing I find very interesting about this EcoDiesel and the Hemi is that this EcoDiesel is probably going to do a lot better in the city when compared to the Hemi, not necessarily on the highway. Like I talked about in my last video about the EcoDiesel, it's kind of like this oxymoron, because these trucks are really not meant for the city. They're meant to be driven pretty long distances on a daily basis in order to really get that after treatment system warm and working properly. Because if you don't really get that after treatment system nice and hot, or the engine up to operating temperature, you're gonna run into a plethora of problems, and that's just not what you want. So in my opinion, it's just kind of funny that this truck is really, good in the city, even though it's really not meant for the city. But anyways, if you're more interested about that, I'll leave a link to the video I made, and it goes into a little more detail about the EcoDiesel, the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, we are on the back stretch of the loop once again, heading back up to our beloved Shell gas station. So far, we have stuck perfectly to our 110 kilometers an hour, and we are averaging 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers currently. I believe the factory spec for this 2017 EcoDiesel is 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers on the highway, so we are not far off at all. All right, we're back at the Shell after our loop. Our final fuel economy average, according to the truck, is 9.3 liters per 100 kilometers. So we are gonna top this thing up, and we will see how much fuel it actually drank, and then we'll do some calculations and get the real fuel economy and compare it to the Hemi. And just like that, the EcoDiesel did exactly what we thought it would. Kind of blew the Hemi out of the water. The truck told us we had 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers, roughly 25 mpg. After doing some calculations once again, on our real numbers, it was much more like 9.7 liters per 100 kilometers, or 24 mpg. So not that big of a difference again. That the truck seems to always be a little bit more conservative than the actual real numbers, but what are you gonna do? So overall, it looks like the EcoDiesel was about 25% more fuel efficient than the Hemi. So finally, we took this little girl on the highway and had some fun. She averaged about 13 miles per gallon, 18.8 liters per 100 kilometers, give or take. Now, I thought this was an interesting comparison to the Hemi because this has a 5.7 liter displacement engine, exact same displacement as the Hemi, obviously completely different engine, completely different truck, but I thought it was an interesting comparison just to see how far the pickup truck in 25 years, let's say, give or take, has come. That's a crazy increase in fuel economy for basically the same size engine, right? 20 mpg for the Hemi and 13 for the old Chev. So I thought that was kind of interesting. With the EcoDiesel coming in at 25 miles per gallon, or roughly like 9.5 liters per 100 kilometers, It is obviously more fuel efficient than the Hemi, which is what we expect. About 25% more fuel efficient. What's interesting also is that both these trucks, the EcoDiesel and the Hemi, did actually come pretty close to their factory spec fuel mileage, if you will, which I thought was kind of cool. Now, here's the important question. Does this increase in fuel mileage want to make me buy this EcoDiesel? And the answer probably still is no. I would still rather have my Hemi. And obviously the Hemi has its problems. I've made a couple of videos on it. I'll link the Hemi tick video I made up there. So it's not perfect, but I think it is still more reliable than the EcoDiesel. From what I've heard from owners basically all around North America, there seems to be quite a few issues still, even with the 3rd gen EcoDiesel. Obviously you have your after treatment system, which is just kind of a nightmare. And there's the whole issue of the environmental emissions, recalls and whatnot for this truck. So it is kind of cool to see, you know, a full-size pickup truck run at such efficient fuel numbers. But to me, at least, I just still don't think it's worth it. I think if you're gonna buy a Ram 1500, I would still recommend getting the Hemi, unless you know you're going to be driving long kilometers or miles on a daily basis. Because if you're just going to be driving around the city, it's just, you're most likely going to run into problems. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I did make a video on the EcoDiesel, and I went a little more in depth into why I don't think it's necessarily the best engine for most people. If you guys are more interested, check that out. In conclusion, guys, I'm definitely not hating on the EcoDiesel. I think there definitely is a purpose for it. It's just whether or not it is the right truck for you. And obviously, as we saw, it is crazy fuel efficient. But the Hemi at 20 miles per gallon is really nothing to sneeze at either. Because like I showed 20 years ago, most pickup trucks were floating around, you know, 13, 15 miles per gallon. So it is still a pretty efficient truck. Despite having such a high displacement engine. Well guys, that's gonna be the end of the video. Appreciate everyone sticking around. I hope you guys liked the fuel mileage comparison. If you did, don't forget to leave that thumbs up and maybe think about subscribing if you like cool stuff like this. But that's it for me, and we will see you on the next freaking video.